You're scrolling through your phone, sipping a latte, maybe dodging a spoiler for the latest binge-worthy show. Life's good, right? You're planning to hit your 70s, maybe even 80s, with nothing but a few gray hairs and some complaints about your knees to show for it. Now, imagine being yanked back in time, way back. Past your grandparents' vinyl records, past knights and castles, past pyramids and chariots, until you're face to face with a woolly mammoth armed with a pointy stick and a prayer. Back then, making it to 30 was like winning the lottery, and a paper cut could send you to the great beyond. Welcome to the wild, brutal, and downright miraculous history of human life expectancy, a story of dodging death, outsmarting nature, and somehow not going extinct. You exist because your ancestors were the ultimate survivors, clawing their way through ice ages, plagues, and wars, all while the Grim Reaper was basically their roommate. Life expectancy, that magic number telling you how long you might stick around, has been a roller coaster through the ages. From eras where childhood was a gamble to today's world of vaccines and grocery stores, we're diving into 5 periods that shaped how long humans could hope to live. We'll rank them from "you might make it if you're lucky" to "good luck seeing your next birthday." Buckle up, because this is the story of how you're even here to read this. Number 5. The Modern Era. Let's start with the VIP lounge of human history, right now. Global life expectancy today is about 73 years. If you're in a place like Japan, you're pushing 85, while some developing nations hover closer to 60. Compared to your ancestors, you're basically immortal. So, what's the secret sauce behind this longevity glow-up? Medicine, for one. The 20th century was like, hold my scalpel, and dropped game-changers like antibiotics and vaccines. Penicillin, rolled out in the 1940s, turned deadly infections into a quick trip to the pharmacy. Smallpox, a mass murderer for centuries, was wiped out by 1980. Polio? Practically a ghost story now. Clean water and sewage systems slashed diseases like cholera, and infant mortality crashed from 20% in 1900 to under 4% today. Wash your hands? Revolutionary. Food's another big win. Industrial farming and global trade mean you're not betting your life on a single harvest. Malnutrition's still a problem in some spots, but most folks have access to calories, even if it's just a burger and fries. Public health campaigns tell you to skip the smokes, hit the gym, and maybe ease up on the energy drinks. Hospitals, seatbelts, and even basic stuff like nutrition labels have stretched lifespans to sci-fi levels. But it's not all sunshine. Heart disease and cancer are now top killers because we're living long enough to get them. Stress, pollution, and your questionable late-night snack habits aren't doing you favors. In 1950, life expectancy was 51 years globally. By 2025, it's 73 and climbing. But where you're born and how fat your wallet is still call the shots. Still, you're living in the golden age of not dying young. High five for that. Number 4. The Industrial Revolution. Hop into the time machine and land in the Industrial Revolution, where steam engines and factories were the new hotness. Life expectancy in Europe crept up to 35-40 years, sometimes hitting 47 by 1900. If you dodged childhood diseases, you might see 50, but it was a grimy, sweaty grind to get there. The good stuff? Factories and railroads meant food moved faster, so famines were less common. Early vaccines, like smallpox in 1796, started saving lives. By the late 1800s, cities like London were getting clean water and sewage systems, cutting down on waterborne nasties like cholera. But here's the kicker. Cities were disgusting. Factories pumped out smoke, rivers were basically toilets, and workers crammed into tenements with zero ventilation. Tuberculosis loved those conditions, killing millions with its signature cough and wasting away combo. Work was a nightmare. You're toiling 14 hours a day in a factory, breathing coal dust or dodging machinery that doesn't care about your hands. Kids as young as 6 were working in mines or mills, their lungs trashed before they hit puberty. Diets were met bread and potatoes for the poor, with scurvy and rickets crashing the party. Medicine was a gamble. Doctors might slap leeches on you or prescribe mercury, which, newsflash, isn't a health food. Childbirth? Still a death trap for moms and babies, with no anesthesia and sketchy hygiene. By 1900, things were looking up in places like England, but you still had to dodge a lot of coal-soaked bullets to hit middle age. Your ancestors were tough as nails to make it through this smoggy mess. Number 3. The Middle Ages, 500–1500 CE. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where life expectancy was a grim 30–35 years, and hitting 40 made you the village grandpa. Childhood was a gauntlet. 30–50% of kids didn't make it to 5. If you survived, you might limp to 50, but only if you were a pro at dodging swords, plagues, and bad luck. You're probably a peasant, farming for some lord who doesn't know you exist. Your diet's bread, porridge, and maybe a sad onion. Meat's a luxury, and malnutrition makes you a magnet for every bug in town. Hygiene? What's that? Bathing's rare, sewage is just a ditch, and people think bad smells cause disease, so they're waving flowers at the plague instead of boiling water. Disease was the real boss. The Black Death, 44-7, 435-1, stole the show, but smallpox, dysentery, and tuberculosis were always in the wings. No antibiotics, just prayers and herbs that did nothing. A cut could turn septic, a toothache could kill, and childbirth was a 50-50 shot for mom and baby. War was constant nights, crusades, or just bandits raiding your village. Famine hit hard when crops failed, and winters in your straw hut were brutal. Nobles and monks had it better, sometimes hitting 60 with decent food and shelter. But for the average Joe, you needed grit, luck, and maybe a saint's blessing to see 40. Your ancestors were straight-up warriors for surviving this medieval madness. Number 2. The Roman Empire. Now you're in the Roman Empire, where life expectancy at birth was a rough 20–30 years. Survive infancy, 25–40% didn't, and you might hit 45, maybe 50 if you're a fancy Roman with a villa. But for most, life was a high-stakes gamble. Rome's got aqueducts, roads, and bathhouses. Pretty swanky, right? Except they didn't know germs existed. Public baths were shared by thousands, and lead pipes probably poisoned the water. Rural folks drank from streams and prayed. Food was decent for the elite: bread, olives, wine. But peasants and slaves lived on grain mush. Malnutrition was a killer, weakening you against diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, or the Antonine Plague, which might have been smallpox and killed 5–10% of the empire. Cities like Rome, with 1 million people, were disease factories. You could catch typhus from a handshake or malaria from a mosquito. Sanitation was spotty chamber pots dumped in streets, rivers doubling as sewers. War was non-stop, soldiers faced brutal battles, and even civilians could get caught in a siege. Slaves, a huge chunk of the population, were worked to death. Childbirth was a nightmare, with high mortality for moms and babies. Elite Romans could hit 60 or 70, but for the average pleb, you're dodging invisible killers and hoping your town doesn't get sacked. Your ancestors pulled off a miracle just by keeping the family tree going. Number 1. The Stone Age. Welcome to the Stone Age, where life expectancy was a brutal 20–25 years, and 30 made you a legend. This is your beetle-munching, dirt-squatting ancestor, fighting to not be lunch for a cave lion or starve because the berries ran out. You're a hunter-gatherer, chasing mammoths or digging for roots. Food's scarce. One bad season, and you're done. No crops, no livestock, just whatever you can stab or pick. Malnutrition stunted growth and invited disease. Speaking of disease, there's no medicine, just shaman vibes and maybe some random leaves. A cut, a broken bone, or a bad cough could end you. Childbirth was a death trap, with half of kids not making 5. Predators like saber-toothed cats saw you as a snack. Violence from rival tribes or hunting mishaps was common. Shelter's a cave or a pile of sticks, and winters are merciless. The last glacial maximum, 20,000 years ago, turned the world into a freezer with ice sheets and scarce food. Yet some folks hit their 40s, tough as flint. Your ancestors were the ultimate survivors, keeping humanity alive through sheer stubbornness. There you go. A whirlwind through the bloody, gritty, miraculous story of life expectancy. From the Stone Age's 20-year sprint to today's 73-year marathon, your ancestors dodged mammoths, plagues, and factory fumes to get you here. You're not just alive, you're a walking miracle, the product of violent coincidence and stubborn biology. So, maybe call your mom, hit the gym, and appreciate that a stubbed toe won't kill you. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, because your ancestors didn't survive all that just for you to miss the next episode. What era would you least want to live in? Drop it in the comments.